We're alive, Mr. Wade. Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. My name is Leonard Brackett. I'll be your chairman for tonight, Belizean Affairs Show number 276. 276. We're glad that we have gotten this far in the process and for your support and your attention. And we hope that tonight's program will accrue to some public benefit on your behalf, our Belizeans at home and abroad, and others. Uh, Mr. Wade is going to be with us until about a few minutes to 8, and we're running up on that already. He had already advised me of that, so he'll be gone, and I'll just continue on. So for right now, in the interest of time, uh, I'd just like to go ahead and say a short prayer, and then turn it over to Mr. Wade for a reading for us. Um, I'll just bow my head. Divine loving Father, we thank thee for this privilege to come before thy presence once more. We pray that thou mayest continue to abide with us, guide us, give us strength, courage, endurance, perseverance, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Thou who art the creator of heaven and earth, and all that in them are, and our creator as well, we commend ourselves into thy hand, Lord. Thou knowest our hearts, our desires, even our most secret thoughts. Please be with us as we go through this program tonight, and help us to do good for others as well as for ourselves. For we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. I yield back, Mr. Wade.
Thank you. Thank you,
You're welcome, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
You're
It's a
welcome, sir.
pleasure to always in your company, sir. And thank you for that warm prayer. And in a sense of time, we go straight to our reading. But again, we want to welcome our viewers, listeners, Mr. Chairman, to our 276th edition of our Belizean Affairs show.
Yeah,
I want to
man.
give thanks and praise to all those who support us, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
and watch our program, and share our program, and consistent with us. I want to give thanks and praise and who share their comments. We thank you. It's very important. Send
Mr.
your
Wade.
comments. While the show is on, send the comments and ask the questions you want to ask.
Mr. Wade, I just wanted to give you a quick notice that so far for the last 4 or 5 shows, we've been getting some serious numbers, like double the numbers. So we're getting a lot of, we're
Thanks.
extending. People are aware that we're out there and they're looking forward to us. And in the interest of time, I'll just stop my talking about that. I could go back to that another time or sometime in the future. I'll yield back to you, sir.
Yes, I appreciate. May God continue to bless them and give them the will to do so. Leonard, I'll go straight to a reading um, from Exodus chapter 23, 1 to 8. It reads, "You shall not spread a false report. You shall not join hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. You shall not fall in with the many to do evil, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit siding with the many, so as to pervert justice. Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit. If you meet your enemy ox or his donkeys going astray, you shall bring it back to him. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying down under its burden, you shall refrain from leaving him with it. You shall rescue it with him. You shall not pervert the justice due to your poor in his lawsuit. Keep far from a false charge, and do not kill the innocent and righteous, for I will not acquit the wicked, and you shall take no bribe, for a bribe binds a clear-sighted subvert the cause of those who are in right. You shall not oppress a sojourner. You know the heart of a sojourner, for you were a sojourner in the land of Egypt. That's
Amen.
my reading from Exodus chapter 23, 1 to 9. Back to you,
Uh,
Mr. Chairman.
could you give us a short public notice, Mr. Will, if you don't mind, sir?
Sure,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, it's a lot going on, it's every day, it's always something in this country, and around the world, as for me, seems like it's a sign of time, for of things to come. I call on those who um using the highways, to be mindful. Um, I call for the killings to stop. Um, the system is saying that things is getting better, and the gang situation is they're suppressing the gang, and there are not as many murders as previous, which I beg to differ. Um, we see lately um, our law enforcement are being named in some serious allegations. Um, we see how sometimes that has played out in terms of the system. We see the ones that get penalized and the one that you know get a pat on the shoulder, although some of them are guilty, but they get a pat on the shoulder for whatever reason. We see the constant injustice in this country of Belize. We see the the people in this country that seems like justice does not pass their way at all. We see the system how they implicate innocent people, because trust me, there are innocent people in jail as I speak. Innocent.
Yes, sir.
But that's the way the system is designed. So for those people who have been wrongfully accused, I pray that one day that they will get justice. And I pray for all those who have lost their loved ones in whatever way, that at some point these family get some justice. And I pray that for those who are missing, that they return home safely to their loved ones. And my people, just bear in mind that you know you need to know your rights, right? And you need to start to hold people, hold the police, hold your leaders accountable for those who have done you wrong, right? Hold them accountable for those who have denied you justice, denied you justice. Hold them accountable. I know that justice is hard to come by in this country because the ones that suffer injustice in this country of Belize is the ones that cannot afford a representation in terms of an attorney. You have nothing to sell or house to put up or no, so you're lost. They lost you, right? Because one, they know that you will not sue them. You will not continue any court action because you cannot afford it. So they get the upper hand of you. And hence the reason why I say there are a lot of young black men in jail serving time for crimes that they did not commit, but because they couldn't defend themselves, they couldn't get representation. So it is what it is. And that system is never going to change. The only way that that will change is if you, the people, demand, step up, voice, be open. Because I say, what do you have to lose? We are already poor, dependent, and have nothing. So what do you have to lose? If it hurts, say it hurts. If you did me wrong, tell them that they did you wrong. Don't be afraid. Step up. So that thing in always being in the background that you are afraid to step up, I urge you, step forward. You know, demand, make some demand. Right? You have nothing to lose. Trust me. And on that note, I will, pass it back to the chairman for tonight. I know he has something very interesting for for the listening public. And I will have to be stepping out in a little bit because I have a other matter to attend to.
Uh,
So
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Wade, for your contribution.
I have
Hopefully,
maybe 7
hopefully,
more minutes
okay. Well, hopefully you might have an opportunity to get back
weighing on
with us
something.
if
Yes, sir.
something else, if the time is available. No, you can just
Yes,
log
sir.
in back
I
again and
have
join
9
us
more
back.
minutes.
Okay. Um. Do you want them to continue
Oh,
a little bit more on what
go
you were
ahead,
saying?
Leonard, because
Because I'll
your
just
whatever you have to
no,
present, is very
no,
important. So
now that you're here, I want to give you the opportunity to at least get off some of what you have on your chest. I mean, when you're gone, I'll be just running through the whole thing on my own. I won't have nobody to give a chance to. I'll just eat the whole apple by myself. Go ahead, sir. Take another
okay,
five.
sis, man. My people, there are people out here, patriotic Belizeans like us, myself, and Leonard and Greg, who advocate, in behalf of the poor and less fortunate, and on behalf of the voiceless, and we advocate on behalf of our country, and we are not afraid to do that. So over the past 2 years or 3 years, we have been through this our program here, Belizean Affairs. We have always been asking you to get to your representatives, the ones that you had voted for in your area, in your respected area, right? Talk to them. Tell them that you know you are demanding for equal representation, and you are demanding for redistricting. We have been doing this for some time now, for maybe over 3 years. We have been advocating for redistricting along with the Belizean peace movement. We have been advocating because it, it's it's only the right thing for past and present government to have done. Our constitution demands that redistricting be done. Um, it demands, but so far, for some reason, the both the two-party system we have in this country just for some reason refuse or afraid, don't want to for whatever reason. I mean, they know their reason. They know their reason why they are dragging their feet. You hear them come boldly. Well, 2012 should donate. 2020 donate. Now, you listen to the now Prime Minister again. You see the road he's taken again, which in the past they had lied that it was necessary and they was going to do it. 2025. When that is done, I think, and it's done the right way, I know that we will have uh, good representation. Equal or near as equal representation, because that's the only right thing for them to do. We on this program, Leonard and Greg, had give a public awareness. We had offered and we showed how it could be done. Leonard had said 2 hour. We had said 3 hours. No, Leonard gave them 6 hours, right? And then you listen to the rant that comes out of the prime minister's mouth, how long it will take, right, to do it because of X, Y, and Z, and so much baby they have to have, and so much thing have to happen, and they got to tweet this and tweet that and do this and do that. Um, what do you expect from a liar? But because if you want to do something, it shouldn't be a big problem. If you want to do it, you will find a way, and we on this Belizean Affairs show showed them how it could be done and easily, right? With Leonard, how is the Leonard with the touch of the fingers,
Yes,
right?
sir. Then take three
Right?
days instead of 3 hours or 6 hours. Then go take 3 days or 6 days or 6 weeks or 6 months, and it would have still been finished before they actually needed to call the election in November. Instead, they went ahead and have this bogus one, unconstitutional election, just so they could have chopped or garner to themselves an extra 5-year term instead of wait till closer to the ending of the term and do the redistricting as it needed to be done. When you finish, Mr. Wade, now and take up from where you left off,
Yes,
because I want
yes,
to add
but
a little bit more to that.
we Mr. Chairman, we just walking backwards of things that had happened, and where we are 2025, right? That we always,
Yes, sir.
we show them, we are showing the nation and the people and the world, how easily it could be done, and what the powers to be were talking about, how difficult it was, and it is, and how much money it's going to cost. You know, you see the, the way they handle the constitution reform that they wanted to do. We see it's all a big hoax, a big lie, because they have their own agenda. Right? And then at the end of the day, they will say, we consulted the nation, we consulted the people, and they said it's okay, and it was okay. So this is what we are going to do. We already consulted, right? As they said it, we consulted what, the entire country. we will go to every village. That's what they said, Leonard.
And they'll educate the people, and then they'll ask the
Yes,
people questions based on
yes,
the Constitution.
yes, yes. And we all know that's a big hoax. We all know that's a lie because we see it played out, and we see, they try to rope in the diaspora, and they know darn well that the diaspora is not going to to vote on that, and we see how all that played out, right?
Uh,
Using the
I see.
word,
I
we
see.
consulted the diaspora. That's what
Greg is in the
we
back.
consulted. And on that note, I want to welcome Gregory Brackett, another senior panelist, to our program for tonight.
Good
Welcome,
night, Greg.
Greg. And the chairman was giving me a little 5-10 minutes because I was going to leave the show, Greg, in a little bit because I have an important matter to attend in a little bit right now. So I'm glad to see you here tonight, and I know that you guys will present a good show and educate the public as always. Um, um, enjoy, and I will say good night
Thank you very much,
for you
Mr. Wade,
guys,
for your
Greg.
contribution to.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. Good night to
Greg,
you
you want
and the chairman. Good
to?
night
Good
to the
night, sir.
people at home and abroad. Thanking you to tune into this 276th edition of Belizean Affair. I thank you, Mr. Wade, for sitting in until I had the chance to log in
Welcome,
to
sir.
tonight's episode. And I hope you have a great weekend, you and the missus.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, I go back to you.
Good night,
Thank you very
guys.
much, sir.
Good night.
Yes, Mr. Wade, you had something. You were trying to say something else, sir? Before, Mr. Wade? I think he's frozen. Okay. Um, I'll just proceed with the program as I had it set up tonight. And the program is a continuation of something that we have been dealing with before that relates to Belize Constitution Reform Commission. And we have dealt with various parts of it on a few other nights before, and we didn't have the opportunity to complete it, so I'll take tonight to complete it, and in addition to whatever else we might bring up in the course of the program. Uh, in this particular essay, which was originally written on October 20th, posted on October 20th of 2021, there was a series of questions relating to the Prime Minister of the country attempting to commit sedition and get the plebiscite to help him commit sedition so that he can blame the plebiscite for the seditious activities. And there was a series of 8 questions that was asked. I'm not going to go back and reread them tonight because, like I said, in addition to those questions, there was quite a bit of other material that I hadn't finished covering, and I would like to be able to cover. So I'll just skip all those questions for right now. I'll skip the part that dealt with the bastardization of the Constitution in regards to the SIs, statutory instruments that were bogus and illegal at that, as well as skip the part that relates to um, the SOE, state of emergencies, that were being declared unconstitutionally as well, and being declared without the proper um, circumstances according to the Constitution, the way the Constitution allows those state of emergencies to come into play. They were not done appropriately or correctly. And then I'll just go on to a section where I want to continue from, and it deals with another set of questions and subsections to those various questions. And question number one, or the item or issue number one, was a stipulation that said from the Constitution of Belize, under Chapter 10 of the Referendum Act, as follows. It says, subsection 2, notwithstanding subsection 1, a referendum shall, which is a command, a mandamus. It's not a request, it's a command. So the Constitution states it by saying that a referendum shall be held on the following issues. For example, paragraph A, it says, for any amendments to Part 2 of the Constitution which derogates or take away from the fundamental rights or human and civil rights rights and freedoms guaranteed therein under section 3 all the way through section 19. And if the government wants to derogate any of those rights, they first have to get the authority that is vested in the people for them, the government, to be able to exercise any of those parameters in terms of violating anyone's right. That particular portion went on to say, to the citizens of Belize or Belizeans at home and abroad, it is clearly understood by most legal trained minds in Belize and other areas that is to say, it is a command, it's a mandamus, when it says that there shall be a referendum. It is not leaving it to the machinations of the government or the Prime Minister or any of the people that are in the legislature. It's commanding them that they have to go through that process as part of the requirements before they can derogate any of those rights. It's clearly understood by most legally trained minds in Belize, and being a command or a directive, a mandate or a mandamus or a requirement as a bar or a threshold to be overcome by constitutionally mandated public constraints by means of a referendum. Then I had another item there, item number 2. For example, well, I dealt with this SI issue, like I said last week, so I'm going to skip that portion in regards to the SIs, because I would like to be able to just finish up this particular portion here. So I don't want to be repetitive in going back over and over on the same sections. It says, any still dated or expired statutory instruments or SIs should cease to carry the original legal force of law or validity, and should not be enforced open-endedly, but should be should be discontinued or take off the books. For example, they have some SIs that they put in place and they keep using them over and over and over. They put them in there as if the SI is supposed to trump the constitutional prescripts and then replace it, when in fact that's the bastardization of our constitution. That should not be happening. But our government under both PUP and UDP have found themselves exercising those kind of malignant conduct or behavior and pretending that they have the authority to bastardize the constitution because no one takes them to court or no one arrests them. You know, in other words, they behave like as if they are above the law, as a bunch of scofflaw. I'd just like to defer for a second and uh, turn over to Gregory to ask if you have any comments on what I had read earlier and what we have been dealing with, because he was the primary individual who initially asked the questions to which I was responding, and therefore I presume that he might have something else to add to what I'm reading. No, I yield to you, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
The Constitution speaks for itself, Section 3 through 19, with Section 20 for judicial review.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the people of Belize should read their Constitution to know what their fundamental rights are and how the Constitution works. Because even though the government have a supermajority to create laws, the government does not have the constitutional power to amend any part of Section 3 through 19, which is the fundamental rights of the people of Belize.
Except,
I also want to say I believe the reason for constitutional reform in this country is because the government wants to take away the fundamental rights of the people. Because as you can see, they had formed the PCC Act
mm-hmm.
and they had verbally said that they would come around to teach the people their constitutional right. But yet still when the people presented to the government about redistricting and was willing to go to the court, take the government to court for not doing the redistricting, the government turned around and said that they were being attacked by the people. So, with that said, we know what type of government we are dealing with, past and present, who has no kind of meaningful fairness towards the people of Belize, and at any time they are willing to violate your constitutional right. I go back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Greg, for such a lucid input and concise stipulations in regards to what the Constitution says, because it is my opinion that our government and government officials are not acting as scofflaw in ignorance or because they don't know better, or maybe they don't have lawyers, or they don't have money to hire lawyers to advise them correctly. Because when they want to hire lawyers, they find the money to hire the lawyers them to defend their law breaking and their constitutional violations, and to try and help keep them to continue violate the Constitution. They can find the money for that. So they could just as well find the money to do the right thing in the first place. Because when they don't do the right thing, and they have to find money to get lawyers to defend their illegal conduct. At the end of the day, they spend the money on lawyers and they still don't go ahead and do what is right. I'll just read a little bit more of this essay that I pulled together there. Um, I went on to say, if they don't like, that is, that the they, in this case, being the government, if they don't like the Constitution of Belize as is, then they should change. They should change it by following constitutionally prescribed required processes and procedures and protocols and practices, because they exist. That is, to legally change or amend the Constitution. But they don't want to do that. They don't like the current Constitution and they want to eviscerate it. So, under a false pretext, they're going to set up this Constitution Reform Commission initially, and when they start getting blowback for how they were behaving and people pointing out to them that some of us were aware of what is it that they were attempting to do, they went to the House and they made some little sleight of hand movement and changed the name of the commission into a People's Constitution Commission. But they never changed the behavior or the actions or their ultimate intent, because they never did give the people enough money to hire enough lawyers to go out as often as was necessary to help them educate the people about the Constitution. They had a couple of lawyers, well, I should say more than a couple. They had a few lawyers, I should say, to be more precise or correct, who gave them some pro bono efforts, but it was not nearly enough for that so-called education campaign to have covered at least 1/4 of the Constitution, much less the whole thing, so people could know what is it that they really want to keep in their Constitution, and or what they would like to ask the government to facilitate the process of going through the referendum process of modifying. Because I'm going to remind you here and now, the Constitution gives the government the rights and the authority and the powers to amend certain parts of the Constitution. Certain parts of the Constitution, as compared to what some people believe, that the government could amend just about any part of the Constitution that they want. And I've had this discussion, royal battles between former attorney generals who subscribe to the idea that the government is empowered to change the Constitution and make amendments. Therefore, if they can change one part, the same authority they can use to change just about every other part. And that is because that's how they would like for it to be. But that's not how the Constitution speaks to those matters. And they want to go ahead and bamboozle people because their lawyers, their senior counselors, they are attorney generals, present and past, but they're not dealing on giving the people the correct information or guidance. They're trying to play high-power games with the people, and because they are supposed to be high-powered lawyers or intelligent people in the society, that any and everything that they say is the law of the land, in support of a bunch of a cabal of rascals who want actually the law of the land to be whatever comes out of their head at any given time. They fail to abide by the Constitution, they deliberately do so, and then they turn around and they tell us, well, they are doing so, but for whatever reason they come up with after the but. At the end of the day, if you're violating the Constitution, you're violating the Constitution. If you are a scarflaw, you're a scarflaw. The current attorney, well, yes, the current attorney general, who was the former attorney general in the last session of the last uh, term, came to us on TV and tell us in our face that there are two different type of referendums. There is the referendum in the Constitution, and then there is the referendum that they authorize by virtue of the PCC Act. When the PCC Act did not trump the Constitution, the purpose of the PCC Act was to enable the members of the PCC Commission to be able to function, go out and educate the people, bring back a report, do a survey of the people, bring back a report to the Prime Minister for him to look at and see what is it that the people would like to have changed. That was the mission of that commission. It wasn't the mission of that commission to keep our current constitution at bay and or not being used to govern the country, because you can only have one constitution at a time. And until the whole current constitution is abolished or vanquished, there's no way that the PCC could have any part in terms of determining what is constitutionally correct or not, and or replacing or using it as a substitute for our current constitution. It has no power of law behind it. It does not be um, whatever a report would have turned out to be would have to be voted on by the Congress or the House and the Senate for it to become law. It has to be assented to. And by the way, what they are putting out there now as their basis for trying to replace the current constitution is something marginal compared to our current constitution. It's inferior. It's just a bunch of blah, 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 blah that has no constitutional merits or draftsmanship attached to it. It is inferior to our current constitution. And they spend a whole lot of millions of dollars to try and eviscerate the current constitution, and still could not come up with anything comparable to it and or better than it. But they will sell the public the idea that, well, it's something new that they're doing, and whatever is it that they're trying to do, they want to use it to replace our former or present constitution. Well, until they can get to that point where they can commit the seditious activities enough to vanish our present constitution, the powers authorized in the present constitution is what the country is living under. And while, as I said earlier, they are authorized to make amendments or modifications to the existing constitution, they are not authorized to make wholesale changes or to eviscerate the whole constitution. Because, like I said earlier, there are parts that they can't eviscerate. And those are the parts that troubles them, because it keeps them in check. It stops them from doing some of the crazy stuff that they have always wanted to do, and for which the Prime Minister keeps complaining about. The Constitution is blocking him off from doing certain things in a certain kind of way, for good reasons. Because the people that put our Constitution together initially knew that as human beings, there will be somebody in the future who will come and want to act like an autocrat or a dictator, or want to act like, to not abide by the Constitution and to do wrong to the country. That's the reason why the Constitution was structured the way it is structured. But these guys, they don't want to abide by the Constitution. They don't want to follow the court orders or the decisions of the court. They want to push the court aside. They want to dispense with the 3 sections of the governance process. That is to say, the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. The executive wants to control everything that happens in the legislative, and they want to control everything that comes out of the judiciary. There are 3 equal branches of governance. Greg, do you have another comment to make before I start reading another part of this stuff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
Again, I say to the people to find out really what the government is trying to do, read the preamble, section F. The Constitution is built on a structure, and that structure is called the Basic Structure Doctrine, which
Mm-hmm.
is enshrined in the Constitution.
Right.
The basic structure enshrines your fundamental rights, which is protected by Section 20. And this is the section that the government cannot change. It cannot be written out of existence. So, what the Constitution is saying, it protects itself. That even if they want to do constitution reform, they must not change the basic structure. They have to take that with them intact as it is, and they can rewrite any laws
Whoa,
that
whoa,
they
whoa.
want to. The present government have a supermajority to do that as is. But as I said before, they do not want to do that because their aim is to get rid of the structure of the Constitution, to interfere with your fundamental rights that is protected, as my cousin has said, by the Referendum Act. As you can see, the past government tried to get rid of the Referendum Act. He went ahead and he tried to implement into our constitution a section 9 of 69, which is inconsistent with the present constitution
Null
and
and
was
void.
ruled null and void. And as to present, I'm still wondering why the no government is trying to use that when that should have been removed from our constitution in totality.
The learned Supreme Court judge, Chief Justice, instructed that that should have been done. But the judge can't come and do it himself. He relies on the legislative and the executive to do their part of the job, and they failed to do so. As you said, not only did Mr. Barrow try to insert Section 9 of 69 into the Constitution, he also inserted Section 2, Part 2 of Section 2 of the Constitution. And the judge also ruled that that was inconsistent and should not be in our Constitution. And now, many months and years after, the present government is pretending that because it is still written in the Constitution and it was not excised or moved out as how it was declared to be null and void, that because it is still written there and they haven't gotten around to clean it up, and I believe that they will never want to clean it up because it will serve the purpose that they are trying to have it serve. But so long as we are here, we will stand in the breach and we will point out their deficiencies or their wrongdoing, and we hope that the people will be able to see that these guys have no authority to just willy-nilly vanquish the Constitution. And the biggest part of their agenda is to vanquish the head of state so that they can one day become or elect our own head of state in the country. While that is maybe a promissory note that they're trying to put towards the people for the future, they first have to commit sedition in order to overcome those difficulties. Are you that, sir?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The present government is bent on doing constitution reform, and even though they have not accomplished that as yet, the bastardization of the constitution
Continues.
is happening and continue to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We can take a look at what happened to Mr. Feinstein when it came to State Bank.
Mm-hmm.
The government and the eminent domain
Which was a lie.
used an unconstitutional act to take over private property for foreign investors. I know that people will want to say, well, the government can do what they want to do, but that is not so. Because as we have stipulated here, nights after nights, when we have constitutional nights, Section 3 through 19 is a bar to the government. They cannot violate your fundamental rights. Now, I also want to stipulate that the Belize Constitution is a parliamentary constitution that most Caribbean country, in fact, even big countries like India, has a similar constitution.
And Australia.
And in India, the government has tried to do the same thing that our present government had done to the Feinsteins. But I don't want to have you, the people at home, just listening to what I am saying, because here in Belizean affairs, we show and tell. And when a government is starting to bastardize the constitution, that is when a country is starting to move left, far left to authoritarian rule. Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I would like to play a tape
Go
so the
ahead, sir.
people can further understand what we do here in Belizean affair.
Go ahead.
Hello everyone, I am Anuj Nakade and you're watching Live Law. Live Law is an online legal news portal that brings you news from courts all across the country. In order to stay updated, please subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we will be discussing what is widely considered one of the most important cases and precedents in the history of independent India. It is very definitely the longest case proceeding to ever happen in any case in the country. The case was heard by the Supreme Court for a total of 68 days and the judgment in it was delivered on 24th of April 1973. Exactly 50 years ago today on this date. The importance and impact of this judgment is so clear that the Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, announced a webpage dedicated to the judgment that would help researchers across the world to learn more about it. Hence, we at Live Law thought it would be good to bring you a detailed understanding of the case because it is a turning point in history that defines us today. Many of our regular viewers may know that when we usually report on a story, we are very specific about the number of judges pronouncing the judgment. The reason for this is twofold. The first is because the Supreme Court is a court of record, which means that every judgment of the Supreme Court that interprets the Constitution is the law of the land. Any case that is similar to that case or has the application of principles mentioned in the case will be similar in the future. Second, because the number of judges that are hearing the case will determine the strength of a judgment. For example, a judgment by a 5-judge bench will be binding on a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court. The Keshavananda Bharti case is a judgment passed after a 13-judge bench heard it, the largest ever to be comprised in the Supreme Court of India. So what was the issue and why did it need to be heard by 13 judges for 68 days? The answer is a little bit of a history lesson. After independence, since our country had a feudal system, large parcels of land were owned by a few people. The Kerala Land Reforms Act of 1963 was a progressive legislation which restricted the area of land which one can own. Based on the Kerala Land Reforms Act, the government took over the land of such big land owners for the purposes of distribution to the landless people. In other words, the tillers of the land were made the owners of the land. One Edenir Mutt, at the time headed by Swami Keshavananda Bharti, owned one such large area of land and their land was to be taken away under the Land Reforms Act. So, Keshavananda Bharti, a priest and the head of the Edenir Mutt, challenged the constitutionality of the Kerala Land Reforms Act, saying the right to property is a fundamental right and the government cannot take away his property. He also challenged this decision of the government on the basis that the Land Reforms Act infringed on his fundamental right to equality, the right to life, and the right to manage religious affairs. But the issue was slightly more complicated than that. You see, the power to take away the land under these land reform acts was protected by constitutional amendments. The 24th, the 25th, and the 29th constitutional amendment to be exact. In our constitution, Article 368 gives power to the parliament to amend the constitution. So for Swami Keshavananda Bharati to succeed in the court, he would have to challenge all three of these amendments to the constitution. Then the question arose, what can be the limitation or what is the extent that these power to amend the constitution can be exercised by the parliament? Can the constitution be amended completely by exercising this power by the parliament? Before going further, we should get to know these amendments. To start with, the 24th Amendment. Through this amendment to the Constitution, the Parliament gave itself the power to amend any part or any provision of the Constitution. The 25th Amendment Act allowed the Parliament to further curtail the right to property, which was a fundamental right at the time. And most importantly, in relation to the Keshavananda Bharati case, the Parliament introduced the 29th Amendment Act. This act put the Land Reforms Act in the 9th schedule. The effect of this was that the Supreme Court cannot review any laws in the 9th schedule, and so the Supreme Court would not have been able to review the Land Reforms Act either. We urge you to remember the context of the 9th schedule because this small detail will be important later in the video. Since Kerala Land Reforms Act touched upon the right to property which was taken away by the constitutional amendments, Swami Keshavananda Bharati also challenged the constitutional amendments which enabled the Kerala Land Reforms Act to take away the Edenir Mutt's land. The final question before the Supreme Court was whether the Parliament can amend the constitution to take away the right to property, which was a fundamental right at that point of time. The Supreme Court, in an earlier case, which is popularly known as Golaknath versus State of Punjab, had stated that the fundamental rights of citizens cannot be taken away by way of constitutional amendments by the Parliament. The judgment was delivered by an 11-judge bench. This is why the Supreme Court now had to form a 13-judge bench to hear Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala. More than 100 cases were read before the court during the course of these arguments, which went on for 68 days. Then, the Union government took a stand before the court that the Parliament had the complete and absolute power to amend the Constitution. The issue then became whether there can be a judicial review of Parliament's power to amend the Constitution absolutely. Finally, the court overruled the Golaknath case and held that Parliament has the power to amend even the fundamental rights in the Constitution and upheld the 24th Amendment. But there is a caveat here. What is the extent of power? Is the power unlimited? The court answered this question by saying that the Constitution has something called the basic structure. Basic structure is not defined in the Constitution, but is understood to be the essence of the Constitution. After Keshavananda Bharati, the Supreme Court identified many aspects of the Constitution which is known as the basic structure, such as democracy, the independence of judiciary, secularism, and the principles of equality, etc. That means tomorrow, even if a party has an absolute majority, which means the party with complete control of the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, cannot amend the basic structure of the democratic character of our country and make it a dictatorial government. That is the basic structure doctrine. The court also later upheld its power.
So there you go, Mr. Chairman. Thereafter, the basic structure, as I said before, that is the fundamental rights. They cannot constitutionally amend your fundamental rights, Section 3 through 19, which is protected by Section 20 for judicial review. I go back to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Greg, for such a lucid presentation. And the tape itself is very self-explanatory. And there's just a little bit that I would like to add to what the tape was saying, as well as what you have just stipulated. That is that, in the first instance, we have to remember that while all of these constitutions that are written for and on behalf of countries who are part of the part of the Commonwealth, is that we have a similar foundation from which all of these different Commonwealth countries got their constitution written. That is out of a constitution of the British um, country or government over 1,000 years of, judicial practices, okay, and had been refined over that 1,000 years plus. So the judicial temperament that is in each of our individual countries' constitution that belongs to the Commonwealth are very much basically the same, except for small bits and pieces that you'd say relate to what is customary practices, societal norms or standards, and some other variables, many other variables. But at the end of the day, the basic structure of all those constitutions from all these Commonwealth countries are basically one and the same, except for those minor modifications, some of which I enumerated just now, and others that I haven't enumerated yet. But at the end of the day, what the basic structure in those particular um, constitutions require is that the people or the plebiscite are the power and the authority, despite the fact that England of itself had queens and kings, who ruled autocratically, not democratically in the past, but are now under a different kind of a parliamentary system whereby Parliament, on behalf of the people, holds the real power. And, like, for example, the Constitution of India, which was referred to in the tape that you played, India has a different independent status than Belize. And Belize has a different independent status than Jamaica. And many other members of the Caribbean neighborhood have different independent status among themselves. That is that some of them are still under the Commonwealth and still have what is called a head of state that is not locally elected, as would be constituted under a democratic or republic country that has its head of state while belonging to the Commonwealth. That head of state is actually elected by its own people. So all these little mechanics people need to be aware of. They are variables, but they make a difference in terms of how the constitutions are supposed to be interpreted, which is why I complain a lot about these judges that we have, especially the most recent ones, them, who come to our country and try to rule based on their past experience and don't and are not sensitized to and or give any considerations to the societal uh, um, uh, basis, because they have been ruling in our country for decades and decades upon decades. And we are used to a certain expectations and certain outcome from certain specific type of cases that most people would be able to say, well, the court gonna rule like this or gonna rule like that, and then sometimes they get surprised. Why? Because of the temperament of the judges that are sitting on the particular case, and sometimes because of the quality of the lawyers who present those cases, who sometimes haul and pull the system and allow it to go in a different direction than how it normally supposed to go, and they are entertained by the judges, you know. So what I'm trying to say though is that our Belize Constitution unto itself is a living document, self-preserving document, as you had stipulated earlier, Greg, and we have always been saying on this particular program. The Constitution of Belize is the supreme law of the land, and it is subject to changes by the legislature, but not all changes. Changes that are made to our Constitution have to fall within the bounds of the Constitution itself. Otherwise, if it falls outside the bounds of the Constitution, our Constitution says in Section 2, subsection 1, that anything that is inconsistent with our Constitution is to be considered and or ruled as null and void. Some things in our Constitution, the way we would rule it or how it will be considered to be viable and not being null and void, in Jamaica, it will be considered as being null and void, for example. Why? They have a different societal structure, and their constitution is being written up in such a way as to allow for these variables. In Belize, what we are having right now is the temperament of some judges that come to our country to rule, and they're ruling in our country not based on our standards and our expectations or past laws, stare decisis law, or settled laws, as how you say it in legal terminologies. That they come and rule based on their predisposed past experience. And they end up, as a result, bastardizing our law, the way our law is structured. For example, our law says that anytime you go to the court for judicial review on a constitutional matter, it should be given precedence, it should be given standings, and it ought to be dealt with in order to have the matter redressed, adjust, and or they call it to perfect the Constitution. In other words, the Constitution is just a lot of words put together. And when the judges rule according to the Constitution, what they are doing then, or should be doing then, is to perfect the intent of the law. Which is why when the judges take up the cases, it is said that the Constitution gives the judge and the judiciary original jurisdiction over all cases that they sit on. So long as those cases are, as you say in your one term, Greg, so long as they're justiciable.
That is
Right?
correct, sir.
If they're not justiciable, then no care what the court wants to say or would like to say, the court should not be saying nothing about those that are not justiciable. They should declare the fact that the matter is not justiciable, and therefore they cannot entertain it. There's no grounds for it to be
Has no
entertained.
merit.
Right, no merits. But then I'll yield back to you for a comment on the point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
I want to show the people at home and abroad when we speak here in Belizean Affair, especially on Constitution Night, and we speak about the bastardization of our Constitution when it comes to our fundamental rights, how it happens and it keeps happening, especially by law enforcement. Let me go to the tape.
Pinto says she will be taking legal action against the department. Meanwhile, 3 new magistrates were recently sworn in, and they are all non-Belizeans. Well,
That is not the tape, but
Take another couple of minutes to see if you can retrieve it now, Greg.
no,
Do a little
I
quickly to facilitate you being able to
right. Let me see if I
take
can
another stand.
retrieve it while you go ahead for a second.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just read a small paragraph of that same thing that I was reading before, just to stay in context. I went on to say, the Belize legislature, that is to say, the Congress of Belize, or the House of Representatives, and inclusive in the House of Representatives as well, we have the Belize House of Representatives as part of the legislatures, and then you also have the Belize Senate as part of the legislature. And you got it, Jared? You think you got it? Can I yield back?
Shortly.
Okay. Yeah. So, or the Belize government, that is cabinet, or the Belize government departments are sworn to fulfill or uphold and abide by the Belize constitution. That is that they are mandated. Nobody is asking them to do something as a favor. They swear an allegiance to the constitution of Belize, constitution
Okay,
and laws.
sir.
Go right ahead, sir. I'll
People
just.
at home and abroad. Here in Belizean affair, we try to educate, especially when it comes to our constitution. And I want to go to the tape to show you when we speak about the structure of the constitution, which is your fundamental rights, how it has been constantly being violated. Let's play the tape.
I saw the police vehicle at my entrance, but didn't see that they came out. So little while I said, make I go see what's happening at my house. When I looked, the police already entering in my house. Nobody was at home. Ransacked my place, and I was asking them what you guys are doing inside my house. No response. They came downstairs to my neighbor downstairs and wanted to search their house too, because they said that they're looking for a fugitive. So they asked them, do you guys have a warrant? And they I forgot what the corporal name is, but two guys came and a corporal came, and we were asking them what you guys are looking for. And before they left, my neighbor tell them, come in, come search, because it's just my son and my gentleman is at home. So now when then they look for left, I would ask them, sir, what you guys are looking for? And then I like, you think we should tell them? And then I asked them back again, who you guys are looking for? So he said he looked for some Dwayne White. So we tell her wrong address, no Dwayne White live at this address. And then when they left, they still come take pictures with me and my neighbor downstairs. And I stick up my middle finger at them. I'm going to tell you what I did. And I stick up my middle finger and I said, then he said, if they come back here and they find out that the guy is staying here, they want to charge we. So we tell her we don't know who near, so nobody at this address live here. I wasn't at home, and I think that's wrong because nobody is at home. You should not enter nobody's place if somebody is not at home. This is breaking and entering. Yes, it's breaking and entering, and I think it's this. I call this for justice because they shouldn't have went in my home without my presence. They could have planted anything. They could have took anything, and I don't know, and come back.
Now, people at home and abroad, this is
Police
where
state. Police
the
state.
Constitution protects your fundamental rights. And this lady right here, fundamental right, was violated by the police in two scenarios. First, let me read what the Constitution says. Section 9(1) of the Belize Constitution, except with his own consent, a person shall not be subject to the search of his person or his property or the entry by others on his premises. So when the police did that without a warrant, as the lady was asking for, they violated her fundamental right. And not only that, the taking of pictures of these people is also
Profiling.
a,
Illegal.
a violation of their right. That is profiling.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say this. The only time the police can take your picture is if you are arrested and charged and you are being placed in detention. That is when they can take your pictures. Outside of that, the police should not take anybody's picture because that is again a violation of your constitutional right. I
And
go
the
back to
purpose,
you, Mr. Chairman.
yes, sir. Thank you very much, Greg. And the purpose for taking a person's picture would be in the case that there is a crime committed and they want to assert themselves that that picture is a picture to identify the person that committed that crime. Okay? They should not be running around taking people's picture just because of the authority that is given to them to take a picture of a criminal suspect, that they should go around and use that same authority under the color of law and violate the purpose of that authority to take pictures just about of anybody that they want. Because that's not what it's for. That's not the authority granted to them. They are infringing on people's fundamental rights when they do that kind of nonsense, and then they have those pictures in the department as part of their records that if you're not convicted or you're not a real criminal and there was a mistake, no such files or pictures should exist of you anywhere wrong in the system. And they don't go and expunge those files and things after when people are judged and they are found not guilty. They just keep it for future records. All of that is a part of what you call committing a crime under the color of law. Police officers are not supposed to be committing no crime under the color of law. They are the primary law person and they're supposed to be doing what is right, not what is wrong. Nor should they be just willy-nilly exercising powers that contravene people's constitutional rights, their civil rights, their basic rights, their inalienable rights, their natural rights. You know, they don't have any such power to do that, but they still go ahead and exercise um, uh, um, illegal activity or illegal behavior, and they're not brought to account for it, either within the department and or in the court system. And most of the time, they lie.
That
Are you with
is
us?
why, Mr. Chairman, I have said it on more than once. Statutory instrument and policies does not trump your constitutional right. Any amendment to the Constitution, as long as it has to do with your fundamental rights, is inconsistent with the Constitution
It's null and void.
and should be null and void.
Exactly.
I am quite sure that some can recall during the COVID 19 under the Minister of Health, the Honorable Michelle Shabat, they wanted through an SI to forcefully have people take the vaccine, which was also
Unconstitutional.
unconstitutional.
Because it says except with your consent.
That is correct.
Uh, I'll read another little part here, and then I'm going to defer the rest of this to some other future date. We've been reading on this particular article for like 3 or 4 sessions now, and because it's so long, we have not been able to complete it. But I just want to. Okay, let me read this little part. Belizean politicians, as the legislature, that is to say, are not empowered unto themselves, even with the affirming votes of all 31 members of the House of Representatives. They are not empowered to create SIs or to SIs that nullify or replaces the accented acts that provide for them in the legislature the effect of law. In other words, the politicians have a penchant or a style that because they are authorized to create laws, they go and create bogus laws outside of the bounds of the Constitution. And then they want to incorporate those bogus laws into the Constitution under the presumption that because they made those laws and they are authorized to make laws, that those unconstitutional and bogus laws should then be accepted as part of the Constitution itself, thereby overriding people's constitutional rights and giving them the power to put those SIs, statutory instruments, into the Constitution as if they were part of the constitutional acts. That unto itself is a bold-faced grab at overreach and grabbing of powers that is not in their jurisdiction. And they do that sometimes deliberately to try and be mischievous towards the population. They go and pass these laws in Congress only to be punitive to the population, when in fact they have not come to the population under whose jurisdiction and powers and rights those laws are supposed to be authorized to get the permission to do so. But because they are entitled to making laws, they go ahead and make the laws outside of the bounds of the Constitution, and that is where the problem lies. They're entitled to make just about any law that they want to make, so long as any law that they want to make is within the constitutional constraints. To say that they are entitled to make any law that they want, that is to say to be unconstitutional, or to violate the Constitution, or to create a different law than what the Constitution contains, or to trample on people's rights, that is not lawful on their part.
Mr.
They are committing
Chairman,
crimes under the color of law. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
if I may,
Are you?
if you can recall, sir, and I know the people should be able to recall when the government wanted to pass the taxes for Tongbourg in the rural area, they went to the House and it was a debate on the taxes. And I can recall that they got up and specify, if I'm not mistaken, that would have been the minister from down south. When the question was put to them about the taxes, when it comes to people selling fruits in their cart or people on the roadside selling, they said that these people would not be taxed.
Right.
And they would not be affected.
Which was a lie.
It was only for buildings and etc. etc. I'm stipulating this because I want the people to understand how the government works and what they get up and say. Their narrative, you cannot believe what they are saying. Because here we come today and I want to play the tape to show you how these people work.
We begin our newscast with one of our top stories, the Belmopan Market Plaza. It's a popular commercial space in the capital, but tonight vendors are under pressure to pay up to the city council or move out. The dispute is one more legacy of the former mayor, Sharon Palacio, that her replacements are eager to erase. The owner of the Market Plaza told us they are a little too eager. Here's more.
It's called the Belmopan Market Plaza, a sprawling 3-acre lot in the heart of Belmopan, where on an average market day you can see hundreds of shoppers looking for anything from fresh market produce to jewelry, clothing, electronics, sometimes even daycare and live music. It's a thriving community commercial space, and its basis to operate derives from this 30-year MOU signed by the previous mayor, Sharon Palacio, in 2021.
You would probably know with the property values in Belmopan what it costs to be on 3 acres in the center of Belmopan. So our investment hinged on this MOU with them that we'd be able to conduct this business, to be able to afford to buy that property over that period of time.
But the PUP council that succeeded Palacios says this agreement isn't even worth the paper it's written on. A scathing letter from the council's attorney dated April 1st advises Zabane, quote, "The MOU is null and void and is not legally binding on the Trade License Board as the former mayor acted ultra vires her powers in signing the MOU on behalf of the Trade License Board as well as granting and assessing trade license fees." The attorney refers to this clause, the very first point in the MOU, which sets up a blanket trade license fee of $30,000 annually for a 5-year term, plus an additional 5-year extension. Zabane calls it exorbitant, but says he agreed because it's a functional model for his itinerant vendors.
But we looked at it where if we did it that way, in a sense, it would protect the small business owner, because getting a trade license in Belmopan could take 6 months, 7 months. If you're a farmer and you want to go sell and you have to go through all that red tape, I mean, you have to plan it one season ahead. It's basic. If you want to start a business, it costs you $20 or $30. You don't have to sign a lease. You don't have to find a building to pay no long-term rent. You just show up and bring your goods. If you're a farmer, if you're selling used clothes, whatever it is. So the whole thing is to have a place where people could conduct business freely without the big restraints that keep you back. And initially, when we got our trade license approval, the trade license board, they were the one to approve it. So I don't see how they're focusing on the MOU we had that was signed by Mayor Sharon Palacio. We have an MOU with the Belmopan City Council.
But the council says the mayor had no authority and, quote, "These actions were beyond the scope of the former mayor. Her actions are considered ultra vires and without legal standing." So now the council says the vendors in this space are operating illegally unless they individually get trade licenses from the board and pay the requisite fees. They're advised to immediately comply.
They want all the vendors to apply for a trade license.
No, Mr. Chairman,
Try,
there
try
you
to take
go.
chance of the people.
Individually get trade license. So all those little farmers who goes to this market and put their vegetable and stuff there has to get a trade license. You remember what was said in the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just to show you, the people, what is happening. And it is not the first time. They are saying the MOU is null and void.
Nope.
The government goes beyond that. Look what it did to the stevedores that had a signed contract that if the sugar moved down south, they would have to pay them. Look how the government bypass it and end up paying the stevedores less than what they were supposed to get. This is what we speak about in Belizean affair when we talk about our constitutional right and bastardization of the Constitution.
Greg, can I add a comment?
Go ahead, sir.
To show how devious and evil these people are. Them people from the sugar thing, right? The stevedores, them. They were supposed to have been given like a little less than $5 million to share among themselves, right? The Prime Minister pressured them down to accept a little over $1 million. After the matter was already adjudged and decided, right? After it had been arbitrated. He had the money to be able to do that for these people as compared to the money where he just gone and then give Mr. Ashcroft almost $400 million. And still they get twice as much as when Mr. Ashcroft made make out for the port, $25 million now for the next 5 years to come. But he was hard up in not being able to give them poor stevedores who need their money for their family and for the survive offer. But he could find $7 million to go buy one piece of sewage pan to build one hospital on. That's the level of evil that these people perpetrate. And with a smile on their face. Go ahead, sir. I just wanted us to add that on to it, no?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think we're close to, oh man, not close to, we're at 30 right now. Could you take a couple of minutes and tie up the show for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to go to one more tip before we close. I think we can do that. But I want to play this tip to show the Belizean people at home and abroad what is happening. The government is penalizing small business and Belizean, as we just saw in the video. But yet the government is catering to foreign investors.
Somebody want a piece of land where I market the pan, okay?
Okay?
Let's not forget that.
I want to show this tip so the people could hear this. Because I want to say something after I play the tape.
With this $1.5 million, I refer to it as a landing fee, that they would be levying on Chinese-built vessels, which would enter the U.S. domestic, which would enter the U.S. market. That rate of that $1.5 million would work out to a significant increase in fees. Not so significant during COVID, because remember, COVID had tested us to the limit where freight went up at least 500%. And I'm thinking the studies that they're looking at right now, it may be about maybe half that amount.
So right now we're paying, let's say, $4,000 for that container. Under COVID, those charges went up to 18 or 20,000.
Yeah, because we could recall those numbers indeed.
But in this scenario, we're looking at it going up to, likely it could go up to $8,000.
Yeah, like double the price. But again, we haven't heard anything insofar as what would be the actual cost. We're just looking at what's been said on the global market and kind of trying to brace ourselves for it.
We know that when charges increase, either the importer eats it or that importer passes it on to the wholesalers and retailers. In most cases, we know
it's a pass on. It's going to be, it's going to be passed on. Definitely, no doubt.
So what effect do you see this happening? Do you see this having?
I think COVID had really test us as Belizean consumers to see how much we could have dealt with in terms of prices, when prices skyrocketed. Again, I would just say smart shopping, buy what you actually need as opposed to what you actually want. But you cannot run from the fact that it will definitely create some type of inflation. So it's another price gouging type effect we will be looking at. And again, like you said, in the grander scope of things, Belize being at the tail end, we'll definitely feel the effect of it.
Very true.
So there you go, Mr. Chairman. But they're penalizing these people trying to make some money through a small business. So we, the consumers, will pay for that. Sky high.
One of the problems is that central government has always been collecting the taxes throughout the whole country and has been giving what you call subventions to the different municipalities and and villages and whatever not. No? What they are trying to do now is to exculpate themselves from the responsibility of giving any subvention to these people while they still collect taxes. Okay? They collect all the land tax, they collect, everything. But central government always grabs everything for themselves.
Well,
but
that is true.
They want now these different communities to find a way to hustle their own little community and give them powers and authority to suppress, oppress, and squash their own vendors or decide who can succeed and who can't,
Right.
who must live and who
But
don't. The Constitution speaks to that, too, but I'm yielding because in the interest of time.
right.
Go ahead, Richard.
But
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we know what happened when these things happen. They still can't get rid of the price gouging yet.
They don't intend
When
to
this
because
start to happen, price gouging will go sky high again
and the price goes up and
because
never
they
come
have
back
no
down.
control. But I want to say good night to the people at home and abroad, and we thank you for tuning into this, our 276 episode of Belizean Affairs. I hope tonight's show has enlightened you, and please feel free to send in your questions or whatever it may be, or pass your comments so we here on Belizean Affair can know where we stand with our show. Again, we thank you. We want to thank who all tune in to our shows weekly, and we hope you have a great weekend. With that said, good night to you.